Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back for the final time this season to the Squanch, Wisecrack's Rick and Morty podcast. I'm Michael Burns, joined as always by the master and commander of the 7 C's of Squanchification, Ryan Haley. Ryan, how are you today?
Wubba lubba, sad. It's all over, Mike.
Wow.
I know. I hate this. Is my least favorite day of the year is the day where we have to recap Rick and Morty, because that means it's gonna be so long till the next season.
Hey, it's gonna be okay. They're gonna it's gonna come real soon, buddy. It's gonna come real soon.
It never comes soon enough.
Well, as Crying Ryan has indicated, today we're talking about season 5, all of it, just the whole damn season. We'll talk about what we think. We'll go through some emails. Before we get into it, did want to say to everyone, thank you so much for all your support this season. As you know, there's been some turnover. Ryan's been here, but we've had some new Squanchers joining in, lots of new guests, new producers. We've really been doing some new stuff, and it's been so awesome to have all the awesome support, whether it's in the comments or emails or hitting us up on social media. Know that we love and appreciate it. And even if we didn't get to, all your emails this season, we truly read them all. We like it. We appreciate it. So thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you for caring about our show and Rick and Morty. And
there's so many shows. Go on. I mean, if you went on the podcast store and said, how many podcasts are there, Siri? Thousands, just thousands. So we really appreciate you spending some time with ours. But let's just get into it. Here's what we'll do. Let's do just whole season thoughts and a grade for the whole season. We teased this last time. We will take it all the way to completion this time. As always, Ryan, I'll start with you. Give us your overall thoughts and a final grade for the whole season.
I was looking. I was overlooking, recalling the beginning of the season, and because right now I think the elephant in the room is that maybe this was probably the worst season of Rick and Morty. Unfortunately, am I crazy to say that? Would you give it that label?
In the running. I would say it's in the running. I'm doing a
rewatch.
What
would beat it?
Maybe. Yeah, probably. Maybe 4.
This is worse than 4. So all I'm gonna say, we should give the same up at the top concession that if we're comparing it to every other show that exists on television,
it's better.
This is better than all of them. Even this season, that is maybe the worst than Rick and Morty. But this is Rick and Morty, so we got to compare it to Rick and fucking Morty. So, but I was looking through the season because in my head, I'm like, all right, this is probably my least favorite season overall. But as I was reading each episode, especially the beginning of the season, I'm like, oh yeah, I like parts of that episode. Oh yeah, I liked parts of that episode. Oh yeah, that episode I didn't love it, but I liked a lot of it. Like, it's a good season. I think overall it's the latter half of this season kind of tainted the rest of it. I feel like maybe spoiled the bunch, if you will, like, because I think starting at the Power Rangers episode, which is, I want to say 7, right? I think that 7, 8, 9.
It is, yeah. 7 is the Gotron one, yeah.
Yeah, 7, 8, 9 was a big lull for this season. I think it kind of made it to where you're like, oh, wow, I don't know if I like season 5. And then I think universally 10 is liked, right? We like 10, even though we're not sure, but we like it. So I think that it does kind of go off with a little bit of a bang. But, we've talked about it before, but Mortyplicity is a classic episode. The second episode. The first episode with Jessica.
Really good.
Great episode. I mean, really fun stuff. We had a lot of fun talking about that. And Jessica's descent into madness. And then when she lives for 1,000 million years. The Captain Planet episode with Planetina. I think we had a lot of fun with that. Just nostalgia tripping on Captain Planet and what they were going for. It wasn't our favorite, but good stuff. Then we got our first sperm episode. It threw you for a loop. It's Rick and Morty. I like when they kind of go too far sometimes. Even though it didn't land, it was still kind of like, all right, they're still shooting for the fences. Then we got a really good episode with Jerry having, the one where with the Hellraisers, right? The what do you call them? The centibites, the nanobites.
Yeah.
The fuck. And I, as a huge Hellraiser fan, those guys cracked me up. This was not a home run episode, but it was one of those where I felt perfectly satisfied at the end of that Rick and Morty episode. And then I'm sorry, I'm just going to go through them. We're already here.
Let's do it.
Thanksploitation. I had a lot of fun with that one. It was, we kind of had a little, if I remember correctly on the pod, we were kind of like, all right, what are they trying to say? Or is this just kind of like reveling in the myth of Thanksgiving? But I think it was fun. And then we kind of get into the big lull, like where it's like no one was really that into the Power Ranger one. It kind of felt like a filler. Especially no one was into the bird person one, especially me. That was not one of my favorites. It had some good. It was nice and dramatic and had some good stuff to say character wise, but certainly not one of my classics. And then the ninth one kind of sucked too. All right, we've gone through them all. I think that long story short, sorry to rant, but I think that this is a very uneven hit or miss season, but with some really good nuggets in there. If my standard is season 1 gets an A+, season 2 gets an A+, season 3 gets an A-, 4 probably gets a B-.
Yeah.
And then I think that this one, I think it's a C+. I hope, which is basically a completely average Rick and Morty season, but
yeah,
with some nuggets.
And I think the important thing, Ryan's already said this, we are evaluating the show against itself. Have to make that clear. I would rather watch a C+ season of Rick and Morty than an A+ season of a lot of things.
This is an A+ if you compare it to most, cartoons or just shows in general on the internet.
Yeah, but you are right. I've started a rewatch recently because what do you do when you've just spent 3 months of your life obsessively watching the show, writing about it, podcasting about it? Right. What do you do to relax? Start back up at season 1. But when you watch those side by side, I agree with you. It's very apparent. So I will say my thoughts on this season, very hit or miss. I'd say the highs were highs, the lows were lows. A huge range in the season. I think it bounced around a lot, and we'll talk about this maybe a little bit more when we have some time to break it down. But I think it bounced around between some episodes wanting to explore ideas, others wanting to explore genre, and others dipping into the canon a little bit. Yeah, for me, some of my favorite episodes were the idea-based episodes. Some of those dipped into genre a little bit. But the full-on genre stuff, a few of those kind of lost me. My general feeling was season starts real strong. 1 through 3, I rewatched the season today on 1.5 speed, so maybe I missed some stuff. But 1 through 3, no complaints. And I think you made a really good point. They were really fun to talk about on the podcast, which I think is a good sign that they were good episodes. Then that run of 4 through 7, not the best in my humble opinion. So 4 is when Morty fucks the horse machine and we have the incest baby. Going through 7 when we get the Gotron episode. I would say the Gotron episode probably my least favorite on rewatch, tied with maybe episode, which was the one that had the Hellraisers 5. I also didn't like that one on a rewatch.
I like them.
Yeah, that one didn't do it for me on a rewatch. But gotcha. Then 8, I think I liked better than you and better than many. The Eternal Sunshine and Bird Person Brain episode. I liked that maybe for what it was going for more than for what it landed. And then like we talked about, 10 worked for me. 9, I'm willing to give a little bit of grace to because it set 10 up. But 9 on its own, I found on my rewatch was very easy to skip through that. 10, however, there's things I still found enjoyable. I'm going to go a little... Wait, you went C+ or C-?
I went C+.
Okay. I think for me, I will say just a solid C. Mid-level C. I think that it still has left me wanting more, left me excited about what's to come, and left me with some very fun moments. Episode 6 wasn't my favorite, but I love, Summer saying to Rick about the president, why don't you guys just fucking get it over with? And I did find on my rewatch, maybe we'll talk about this when we get into it, some really underrated Summer moments throughout the season. They gave her some zingers. So
Summer rocks.
Yeah, if you do a rewatch, pay attention to that. So C+ and C overall. Of course, we'll want to hear what you all think as well. There's our grades. Let's get a little more specific now. We kind of got to this in the grades, but Ryan, I'm curious, what would you say are your favorite episodes of this season? If you had to get into what you think the highest points of season 5 are, whether it's one episode, if there's a few episodes you think stand out, What are your high highs for season 5?
Not to sound like a broken record, but
Break it.
Mortiplicity. Mortiplicity number 2 was I feel like not only works as a Rick and Morty episode, but almost is just like a really cool like sci-fi, little 30-minute episode of it could be like a Twilight Zone episode or something. But it certainly works with this. And it almost feels like it doesn't even belong. It feels like it's its own thing. It feels like a standalone almost in a great way.
Yeah. Doing a rewatch, it totally stands out like that. It doesn't, there is the clone Beth that pops up in the very end, which I think at the time we were like, maybe she's coming back, but no, doesn't come up again in the whole season. If anything, connects back to season 4. You could not watch that episode and you're fine with the rest of the season. You should, because it's so good, but I love how it's just a self-contained thing. And at the end, the fact that we care so much when it is just decoys killing decoys of decoys. And at the very end, we get what we think is, the Rick C-137 and his family. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that it wasn't our Rick the whole time.
Well, and that's what's so fun with the game they're playing there. It's just like every time it happens, it almost makes it funnier and cooler. Like you're like, all right, this should be the end. It's like one of those jokes that keeps on going and going and going. And it's almost funny how long, how long can they stretch this thing out for? It's a balancing act. But yeah, like I feel like they nailed it. And everyone, yeah.
Oh, I'd say this, the one point of connectivity with where we get by the end of the season, there's a line where Rick says, if you really want to know what happened to Beth's mom, and I think gets killed right afterwards. So there is this reference Rick makes to that tragic backstory that we finally get put in front of us in 10. So there's a little bit of a theme there. But we get some great lines too. There's the one where one Rick says to the other, I'm not a man, I'm God. You're just made in my image. Mm-hmm. Oh, I loved it. We got Mr. Always Wants to Be Hunted popping back up at the end. Just one of the more absurd random characters. It was a good episode. Any other episodes for you that, looking back on the season, you want to give a big hell yeah to? Or do you think Mortiplicity is on a plane of its own?
I think that's the highlight for me. But then we kind of mentioned it before, but Jessica's descent into madness in the first episode, I feel like was a really cool character turn for her, for kind of a side character that we haven't really paid that much attention to or seen since then.
Oh, for sure. I think if there's one thing we got in so many emails throughout the season, people wanting to talk about Time God Jessica. Will Time God Jessica come back? How will she come back? I mean, good Lord, we got to ask the voice of Jessica herself during the season, will Time God Jessica come back? We couldn't get an answer because of contractual reasons, but hopefully she does. But that was really fun and fun to see that character fleshed out a little bit more.
I would also say that episode 10 was kind of the most like I don't even know how to describe it, but that intense feeling I got during the second episode where I'm like, oh man, this is something new and edgy and just I'm excited to see how this unfolds. I got that feeling during the 10th episode where where they're connecting all these threads that they've kind of buried in for the rest of the series. I thought that was cool.
No, having watched that one a few times now, that final scene of evil Morty, going through the curve, getting out of his ship, taking a breath, shooting off his yellow portal gun. That's a cool moment. Really,
that's
really
kind of the
intense.
moment I'm talking about. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's great. I agree with you on that one. I think if I had to add one for me, I agree with your takes, but probably my favorite episode looking back is 3, the Planetina episode.
Really?
And I just like how it taps into the nostalgia of some of the stuff we grew up with. Obviously, some of us in a certain age bracket probably grew up watching Captain Planet. But the way it gets at this theme of the way in which things are kind of like sold back to us in cynical ways as we get older. And or even sometimes you look back at things you appreciated as a child and you see maybe like a corporate cynicism underneath. I loved how they explored that with her kids and sort of the tension between there. I also like how it tapped into the question of like, what is reasonable when we're responding to catastrophe.
Right.
And I think the best part about that episode is I don't think it made it clear, because I think it obviously shows that it's pretty fucking gnarly to burn down a bunch of miners and Morty can't deal with that. But I definitely don't think you're left with the thought of like, oh yeah, Planetina was bad. We should only do very kind and gentle things and stuff like that. So I've kind of had fun, continuing to think about that one.
Mike, you're about to get robbed.
Oh no, am I?
Someone by the house. Oh my God.
Oh, sorry. This woman keeps sneaking into my house, guys.
And bringing you food.
It's just terrifying. Awesome. No, not for me, I don't think. But yeah, so I like that episode a lot. And I think the thing I really loved too was the final moment of that episode, because I think it set up something interesting for the season. What we got a lot of in the season is Morty feeling alienated, isolated, sad, alone. And there's the moment in the episode where Beth says, "No, Planetina, you cannot move in with my child. You cannot cohabitate with him." And Morty gets really intense and says that's like the only person that ever made him feel like he's belonged, that's ever made him feel like he's been loved. Like, what a gnarly thing to say. You're a teenager and you felt so alienated and shitty. This is the first time you felt accepted. And in the moment at the end when Beth is comforting him, to see Beth like be a really good mom like that and see Morty broken down, and even to see, I'm going to draw a very thin thread here, that connection between Morty experiencing that type of loss that makes him feel like total shit compared to the end of the season when we see how Rick's entire journey to become the Rick who he is was motivated by a much more intense type of loss, seeing his daughter and wife die. But I appreciated that. And then looking back, it makes you realize that there was that theme throughout the season of Morty getting pushed away. I mean, it happens again. It wasn't an episode I loved, but in the Gotron episode, Summer kind of takes over. He gets pushed to the side. And obviously what we get in 9 and 10, especially 9 beginning of 10, is him getting pushed aside that way. If I had to say, go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, I was just going to say, to echo what you're talking about with Planetina, I thought it was a very good, normal episode, because the other two I gave examples of, the Mortiplicity one and then the last one, are kind of weird, these one-offs I don't know. Whereas the one that you're talking about is very much just fits as one piece of the whole, but also kind of works on its own. And the whole cynical commercialization of activism or something. I guess I feel like I've seen that theme before in other media, which is maybe why it didn't, wasn't as effective to me. But obviously in this instance, it's not, they go insane with it and have this bizarre family connection between this weird being and then her older counterpart. So that part was a cool subversion of that. But yeah.
Have you seen this new reality show, Ryan? That's the activist competition show that CBS is making.
Oh my God. Yeah. I can't wait to watch that.
Yeah. If you haven't seen that, look it up, but it's a real life version of some of the same logic we see in the Planetina episode, where now people can reality compete to be the coolest activist and pitch their idea to the G20.
Well, the best part about that was literally in the press release or something, it was and the way we judge on how good of an activist you are is by how many likes and engagements you're getting on your posts.
Yes.
It has nothing to do with whether you've solved the underlying issue of what you're being at. It's how many people have said, yeah, I believe in that too on Facebook.
Yeah. It's sort of like, if Planetina sells all the Funko Pops they have of her, then she's a better environmental superhero or something like that. If you're listening to this too, if you care, we're going to talk about that on Culture Binge this week. Sorry to do cross-platform promotion for another Wisecrack podcast, but to be fair, you also got to listen to Show Me the Meaning all the time, no matter what. And then I'll just say with the highs of the season, I agree with episode 10. I think that something that's helped this season is it ended on such a good note. It ended in a really confident way. I like when the show was confident. It felt like it knew what it was doing at that point. It threw a lot at us, but it made it matter. It connected back to some stuff. And to connect all the way back to, what was it, season 2, the Evil Morty episode, when we see him walking away, realizing he'd controlled that Rick the whole time and takes his eye patch off. And he has the download of Rick's brain with him. Maybe it was season 1. I'll get roasted for not remembering it by someone, so apologies ahead of time. But I loved how they made that matter and kind of caught that heat again from that character, 3 seasons later. Really, really like that. Yeah. And like we already talked about when you brought it up, just love that final moment of that episode.
there's a good question in chat that I'd like us to answer.
Oh, let's do it.
Because I think it's a very good, pertinent question. A person named Only For Crap, the number 4 in there, says, "Isn't this the season where both Rick and Morty grew the most as characters? If only for this reason, how can this be the weakest season?" And I think that's a great question because I agree with him. It is the season where I feel like we get it's the best character study of these 2 characters that we've hung out with for 4 seasons already, 5 seasons now. But it's the weakest. Why is that, Burns? I kind of have my reasons, but what do you think?
I think we might agree on this one. We might not, but I'll say this in the most simple way. It wasn't as funny as the other seasons.
There we go. That's basically what I was going to say. Is that yeah, we got a lot of good character development, but to what end? I watched this show for jokes, baby.
Yeah.
And the feels and the logic and the just cool, existential reasoning of it all. But they I think over intellectualized their character development moments a lot, where you're getting these long monologues, soliloquies from Rick about, kind of psychoanalyzing himself, which is cool because he's a really cool character to psychoanalyze, the smartest person in the world.
Yeah.
That's a nihilist, that also has a family, that also lives in a multiverse and has conquered it, whatever. That's a crazy character. And it's cool to get dig into the psychology of it all. But I think the kind of show don't tell adage should be applied to a lot of this, where I felt just a lot of, I would like to always be shown how he's, his character as opposed to being told. I feel like there was a lot of conversation about it as opposed to, watching it.
And I do think, in a sense, Rick and Morty has tracked some of the trends you can see. If you watch, whether it's adult animation or just straight up comedy shows, there's been a tendency towards thinkier comedy writing, I would say. And I think when you watch a lot of contemporary comedy shows, you don't laugh as much as you might have in some other things because they're getting into ideas and concepts, which, don't get me wrong, we're broadcasting on Wisecrack. I think that's all good stuff, but sometimes it happens at the expense of the laughs. Or in certain shows, and while I like it, maybe we could say that a show like Ted Lasso falls into this, a little more emotion-based, wants to give you the feels, sometimes at the expense of making you laugh. So I think Rick and Morty, this season especially, felt the most affected by that trend. And I know they brought a lot of new writers on, many of whom I think are really, really great. And I also think the problem is the show, when you go back and watch the early seasons, it does such a good job of hitting all the notes. It's like when you eat something delicious, if it can be salty and fatty and a little sweet at the same time, it's like, yes, I don't know what a good example is. Maybe a good bowl of ramen, a fried chicken sandwich with the right type of hot sauce and some like briny pickles on it. And the early seasons do that because in one episode, you'll have genuine belly laughs of surprise. You'll think about, oh my God, what if nothing in the universe means anything? And you'll also have a moment of being like, wow, man, family's kind of fucked up. And it's weird sometimes that we have to love these people that we don't choose and vice versa. And that can happen in a 22-minute show about a cartoon grandpa and his grandson. And I think that's, for me, why this season, we can't say it's the best because it grew in one area. And I think that was Only for Craps is totally right, that there was so much development. Or Only for Crap, I'm sorry if I forgot your name, but I think in the other areas it lagged behind a little bit.
100%. Yeah, I think you just nailed it. And I would also reiterate that the thing that we're talking about, like being able to nail this in the effective way they did in the first 2 seasons, is so hard to do. Right? It is so hard to keep the jokes rolling while you have these awesome characters, while you have this insane circumstance that they're all living in, and getting into the reality, the reality of that universe. Like, so it's a miracle that they ever make one classic episode of this, much more entire seasons. So we're really holding them to the highest standard. And I get that they want to explore other avenues or different parts of this universe. I think you said it well earlier too, where it seemed like this season was very much it was almost like there was 3 groups of people being like, oh, I want to explore the characters, I want to explore what were the other 2 themes that you said?
I said ideas, and then like genre and characters, and like some of the canon stuff.
There was ideas people, the characters people, and then the other stuff, and rarely did they all perfectly coalesce into a great soup, which is hard to do in this season, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like the problem of I've never done this. I don't know who has, but it'd be like if you went on a first date and you just like crushed it. You just, you put all your effort into just being, you're charming, but you're also thoughtful, but you're also funny, but you're also exciting, but you're also sexy. And then you manage to, a lot of you might do that for the first date. You're all into it, and then you just hope the other person sticks around. But imagine if you did that for a year. Imagine if you pulled that off for 2 years, always hitting all those notes. And then you slowly just became a really awesome person, but not that person. And I feel like when we criticize the show, for me at least, that's what it's like. That this show managed to be on its perfect first date form for seasons at a time. And only now is starting to like lose some of those threads and just be a great date. Someone you still want to hang out with. And as we would say when I was in high school, buy a snow cone for. I don't know who said that, but my friends would always say I would buy them a snow cone.
Oh, yeah, I get the analogy, yeah.
Yeah, I have no idea what it was, Yeah. Let's say this before we go into emails. And I like to, dwell on the positive, but we talked about highs. What do you think was the lowest moment of the season? And you kind of got to this in your summary, but where did you feel the most hopeless about where things were going?
Let me look here. You give yours first. What was your lowest of the season?
After going back, watching them all again, it's close for me. Between the the Hellraiser episode and the Gotron episode, I'm gonna say the Gotron episode for me. Just the one that they took some swings. They did some interesting genre stuff there, mixing both mecha stuff and mafia stuff, but for me that was the low point of the season.
Okay, I can see that. I think the low point for me, and this is mainly for me, I don't know if this is even for the series, but like the 4th episode when we're with the giant sperm monsters, I just remember sitting there going, God, I feel like a cartoon where there's giant sperm monsters is right up my alley. I should love a cartoon about giant sperm monsters. And I just remember not laughing and kind of thinking that it was stupid. And then me having this existential moment going like, oh man, is this a sign of me getting old that I'm not laughing at giant sperm monsters in this cartoon?
Wow.
But in hindsight, I think it just wasn't a very funny, in my opinion, giant sperm monster cartoon.
I mean, the reason I can't say it's the least successful episode is because it contains the line, "Mom, I promise to use condoms even when it's butt stuff." But this is what I realized. In a lot of episodes where I didn't laugh at anything else, watching back, it was like, oh, the one summer line that's like the really quick kind of cut to thing. It's like, oh, thank God for that. But they're harder to catch, not as essential to it. So I definitely feel you there. And I would say with both those episodes, not super funny.
That's my problem. Yeah.
Yeah. So we need a little more of that.
And it's not like I'm like not trying to laugh. I'm like a very generous, I feel like, Rick and Morty fan, where I'm like just sitting there like, I'm an easy target. I will laugh at anything.
Well, how about this? Before we dip into the mailbag, do you have any hopes for the next season? So one thing, I mean, we know for sure they're making a bunch more episodes, and we know for sure that they've already finished writing season 6 and 7. 6, I imagine they're in production on right now. 7, maybe they are as well. So they already have the next 2 seasons mapped out. Anything that you are especially hoping to see at the start of season 6?
Honestly, I'm the most hopeful I've been as a Rick and Morty fan in a while, because it's like I feel like they, in their minds, they saw the end of season 5 as kind of like, all right, we have this nice bookend to the first 5 seasons of Rick and Morty. Here we are. We've kind of explained a bunch of shit that we probably didn't even need to explain, but we went out of our way to do so. So to me, it almost feels like they're setting themselves up to have a complete fresh start at the beginning of the next season, and that's exciting because it's like, all right, cool, let's bring it on. It's not like we have all these kind of loose ends where we're like wondering how they're going to tie it together. It seems like we're going to have a fresh blank start, like I said. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at the jumping around with Evil Morty, some stuff came up with that character that took 3 or 4 seasons to cash out. But I think in a sense, that's what I think we might see. I do think we will see thematics from this season come back. I don't think, however, they might come up till season 7, 8, 9, long down the road. So I'm excited to maybe catch those moments again, but I'm excited for a mini reset, and I'm excited for the idea that season 6 starts out by pulling the rug out from under us and having just some really good bottle adventure episodes that are very funny.
Yeah,
I would very much like to see that. I hope at some point, I'll just keep saying this, that it'd be great to have Time God Jessica pop back up in some interesting way. And she even says in that episode, like, there's much more for me and for you, but I think we should just be friends. Before she leaves the garage and then the car yells at her and she says, fuck off, I'm a time god. So, I would like to see that come back around a little bit and explore Morty's life a bit more. But with all that we've said about this season being the least successful, it is in no way curbed my enthusiasm for the upcoming season. So still very excited about that. When they first start dropping promos for that, I'm going to be giddy like a little kid.
Yeah, me too. And I also hope, obviously, that the Two Crows come back. I want to see more from the Two Crows. That's just me, though.
I would see them again. I don't want to see Crow Scare because I don't want to see what they do sexually. I've just been thinking.
I do want to. I want the DVD of that.
The most obvious thing I can think of is some sort of nipple play where the two crows are sort of stimulating the nipples of Crow Scare.
Oh,
but I don't.
They probably take like little pieces of hay from from his body and then just like tickle him, so it's like some weird tickle fetish. Maybe on the nipples.
It could be that when you are an animated scarecrow, that the hay has a sort of like nerve ending effect, so you might experience pleasure from the bristles being tickled. So maybe it's that.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, if anyone is an expert in a scarecrow / crow scare sexual fetish and just sexual physiology, you can let us know. It's squanch at wisecrack.co. You can also let us know your thoughts on this. I guess I'm giving this now. We're not going to do an episode for a bit. So at this point, I'm telling you the email address. This is just for us, it's not even an episode. I'm just being honest with you. But if you just like feel like you're listening to this and you're like, ooh, I agree. Ooh, I don't agree. Ooh, I think they're missing something. And they need to know you can email us at squanch at wisecrack.co or call us at 213-534-8807, 213-534-8807. And as always, a reminder, if you are going to miss hanging out with Ryan every week, guys, show me the meaning. He's there. We have another podcast that's very Ryan Haley heavy. If you feel like, ooh, I want Michael's voice in my ears, Culture Binge, friends, it's there for you to listen to. So we're still going to be around. You can still hit us up. There's other email addresses, but hit those up if you want. And final reminder as well, great emails this season. Thank you so much for all of them. We're going to hit some now. We're not going to have time to get all of them because we had so many good emails, but we'll rip through a few.
Sure.
First one right now from Hernan. Little fun observation about the central finite curve. He said, I watched back to season 1, episode 9, when we were first introduced to the Citadel, and something caught my attention. The existence of the central finite curve basically meant that the doofus Rick we saw back then was still the smartest man in his universe, which I just thought was kind of cool. Also, I want to see something between Time God Jessica and multiversally free Morty. That last bit, show me that any day of the week. Let's get those two together.
I absolutely hope that at some point they probably will explore the outside the curve, so we see people that are smarter than Rick.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to get back to what I'd like to see in the future, definitely want to see that. And what more brutal thing could you do to, let's call him our Morty, than to have evil multiversally free Morty truly get with Jessica before he did, truly find love in that way. I would feel bad for our little guy.
Nice.
So yeah. Here's another one. And I'll just say this, guys. We fuck up sometimes. We're not perfect. We're not angel. We don't come on this podcast and say, this is your final authority for Rick and Morty. We made a grave mistake last episode, and our friend Cooper called us out. He said this: listener since the launch. First time I felt the need to email the pod. This is how bad we let Cooper down.
Oh, shit. What do we do?
You didn't even mention one of my new favorite characters and one of the best end credit scenes of the whole series. Shame. Do Garbage Goober justice. He's right.
Oh, yeah.
He's right.
He is right. Yeah, you're 100% right.
That was a really fun character. It was the contrast between the idiot garbage monster and then going back under with his wife, seeing his Harvard medical degree on the wall. That was so good and so dark, and it didn't need to be there. I mean, I would even say, talking about like where the show isn't funny, something like that was like one of the funniest moments of that episode, because it was just a dumb joke that wasn't trying to do anything else. So Cooper, I hope you don't have to email again for 5 more seasons. I'm sorry that we
fucked up. When we fuck up, we say when we fuck up, and we fucked up.
We're gonna cop up. Longer email here. This is from Sam, and I'll maybe summarize, but I'll read the first part for sure. It says, with the big revelations at the end of season 5, it looks like we may have a new insight into Rick's nihilism. We learn that Rick C-137 did indeed have a family that was murdered by another Rick, and that he failed to get revenge. We then see Rick, now without a lead on his family's killer, descend into a resigned killing spree before calling a truce, setting up the Citadel and the Finite Curve, and finding a new family to integrate himself into. So Sam has some questions about Rick's character because of this. It says, firstly, this appears to recontextualize the show, especially this season, as a cosmic exercise in escapism for Rick. He says, we've already seen Rick's obsessive personality steer him time and again into substance abuse, but the Finite Curve guarantees that Rick can spend every moment living in his manufactured multiverse, never truly challenged by anyone or anything. So in a sense, Sam is saying that this recontextualizes that aspect of Rick as being purely about escapism. Second, he says our understanding of Rick's nihilism is certainly enhanced by the knowledge that Rick lost his ability to pursue his family's killer. He now lives in a universe dedicated to distraction and meaninglessness, trying to stick to the episodic adventures, as every time he gets pulled into serialization, he gets pulled away from this distraction. But what do you think? Is it too much of a reach to think of the central Finite Curve as a cosmic game of Roy? I actually don't know what Roy means. Do you know what cosmic game of Roy means in that context?
No, I don't. Okay. Cosmic game of Roy.
But I think I get everything else Sam asked. So I don't know. What do we think when we learn all that we learn in episode 10? Do you know what Roy is?
Yeah, it's talking about
the video game from season 1 or 2?
Yeah, yes. when Morty is in the arcade and he lives an entire life as an old, until he's old and dead, and then he dies at his mattress store, right?
And then he takes the thing off and he's like, "Oh my god, I'm a kid. You're my grandpa." Like he just has was talking about funny moments. But yeah, I think this is an interesting question. I do think one of the things about Rick's character we've all appreciated or been appalled by over the years is this kind of cold nihilism that seems to come from science, seems to come from Rick viewing the world in this super rational way. I think what Sam's getting into here is, should we recontextualize that and say it's not so much about his science brain, but more about him trying to escape feeling things?
Well, does he look at the world in a super rational way, or does he just, he knows all these secrets about the world, so his world is different than our world, right? Where he's living in a world where there's multiple worlds. So, and he's the only one that seemingly knows. Well, no, that's not true, but
I guess maybe I'd even say he's super rational about human stuff. So whenever he talks about sex, relationships, anything, there's the line in season 1 where he just talks about how love is just a chemical reaction in the brain for idiots. So it seems like in a lot of ways the nihilism has been an explanation for why he isn't a super emotional connected person. I guess the question is it really the other way around, that the nihilism is motivated by that type of hurt and emotion?
Yeah, I think that episode's supposed to basically, paint this sadder character than we ever thought. We thought he was just a kooky old man, that got into crazy adventures. But really, it's like he essentially had this mission for revenge and then gave up because he got too old, and then wanted to live out the rest of his years with his, not even his real kid, like essentially a clone that doesn't know that she's a clone, or a different version of her. So that's crazy, or not crazy, but that's just sadder than the other image that we used to have of him. And it is kind of weird how they don't really get into it. They kind of only told us this in this whole montage, but it is weird how he gives up looking for the killer, which I'd still like to know the answer to.
Yeah.
but then seemingly because he's old and just giving up, but then he can also run. He seems very nimble and able to run around freely and fight and do combat and stuff as an old man. I guess he's a complete Inspector Gadget robot person too, in a way, and has all these secret things going on in his body that we don't know about. So maybe that's it. But
yeah, but I do like Sam's first point too about the escapism thing. 'Cause I think sometimes, whether it's in great TV shows or life, there's always the question, like, is someone's personality trait or a thing they're interested in, is it about them and what they like or love, or is it an element of escapism? You know, is the person at the bar too many nights a week because they love hanging out and drinking with their friends, or because they're trying to get away from something? And I don't know. I guess that we've seen signs of that, of course, with Rick's character since season 1, but I guess episode 10 really shines some new light on that. So all I'd say is, that's a good question, Sam. I think you bring up some good stuff there.
totally.
I'll bring up one email really quick. We talked about this last time, but I must bring this up because I saw this email after our last episode and right before we started working on the video that Wisecrack did last week about the finale and kind of about some of those themes of kind of some of the stuff that we were talking about with Austin last week, how much of it was digging into capitalism. And I'll probably say your name wrong, so I'm really sorry. It's Vinicius says, the central finite curve is the metaphor for capitalism. The central finite curve was created by a manipulative Rick to keep everyone from experiencing any possibility of a universe where he's not the smartest thing alive. And he says capitalism has a similar way of walling off the mere possibility of alternatives to it. So I just want to say...
I'm sorry, can you repeat that whole thing slower?
Yes. Sorry.
My bad, I didn't absorb it.
No, I think it's because I've been watching episodes of the show on 1.5 speed all day that my brain is communicating 1.5.
That'll scramble it, yeah.
So he just says this: the central finite curve is a metaphor for capitalism. The central finite curve was created by a manipulative Rick to keep everyone from experiencing any possibility of a universe where he is not the smartest thing alive. Goes on to say that capitalism has a similar way of walling off the mere possibility of alternatives to it. And then he has quotes Margaret Thatcher saying there is no alternative to the system or whatnot. Churchill's quote in which democracy is the worst political system except for every other one. Just kind of saying that all of this reminds him of capitalism and that the central finite curve is a metaphor for that.
Sorry. Yeah, I push back on that and say that it's more a totalitarian metaphor, right? Because I mean, it's Rick's way or the highway. Like he's pulling the strings behind. He's the Wizard of Oz behind this whole thing. Very much in a totalitarian society, whereas capitalism, seemingly, you got some freedom, baby. And I think that it's people project this notion of, and it also subconsciously makes me subservient to this system. I know if Austin was here, we'd get in a big fight about this right now. But yeah, I don't know. What's your response to that?
I mean, yeah, I definitely think I'll say this, whether or not you are right about what you're saying right now, I do think that's what the writers of the show were clearly trying to communicate, because Rick 2 times in the episode is like, it's a metaphor for capitalism. And I think that in terms of getting into freedom, I think they try to aim at that a little bit with the Morty market and this idea that, Beth and Jerry, not as free as they think, put together to have these kids. The Morty's not as free as they think. So I do think that that's what the episode is trying to do. Mm-hmm. Whether or not that's reflective of how the world is. I think you can't say it that many times. But but we kind of got into this question a little bit in a video we made, and it was just interesting to see that email right when we were making it. Here's a fun email from Travis, wondering about, we already talked about this, but plot threads for the next few seasons. So he says, last week the question was asked whether the season finale ended a lot of the canon to switch to more episodic storytelling. I think this finale answers a lot of questions from the first few seasons of the show. But with many of the questions answered, the season has opened up new directions and plot threads that I think the writers will continue to develop. So here's some examples that Travis gives us. Bird person's bird child. What's going to happen there? Finding the Rick who killed C-137's wife and child. Following evil Morty to the yellow portal. Who and what lies outside of the finite curve? Time god Jessica. says these are just a few potential areas to explore. I think they'll continue to practice serialized storylines when it suits them. Are there any new old plot threads that you think they'll pick up in the next few seasons? So, any thoughts on either the plot threads he brings up here? So, the Bird Person's kid, finding who killed the wife, Yellow Portal Morty, Central Finite Curve, Time God Jessica, or any other themes that you think will get picked up in future seasons?
I think that seeing a couple seasons down the road, I can absolutely see them on like season 10 or something. We'll say them actually wrapping up him finding the killer and then having an actual resolution to his life, basically. Like oh, I found all the answers, and it'll either be wrapped up in a tight bow, with a little cliffhanger or something, or whatever. I think that's in our future at some point. The Jessica thing, I think we, like we said before, we hope she comes back, but
I wouldn't put money on it because who knows there. I mean, I think if Christopher Nolan becomes a writer on Rick and Morty, I think what'll happen is we'll learn that Rick killed his own family and that he's the one who did it all along. And the reason he couldn't find himself is because it was him. I do not think Christopher Nolan is going to start writing for Rick and Morty. I don't think it'd be fun if he did. I don't think the show would get any more funny if Christopher Nolan was there. But yeah, I mean, a lot of these, like, we're definitely going to see Bird Person again. He's been a on and off presence in the show. The kid thing's going to come back. Evil Morty, I just think we can't be done with him the way that things ended. Like we just said, Time God Jessica, I hope so, but I'm not going to put any money on that. I do think at some point we'll get Clone Beth again. I don't know when and how. I think they teased us this season with Clone Beth at the very end of Mortiplicity, but definitely we'll get her back at some point.
I feel like I would like to see a deep dive into the character that is Mr. Squanch. Let's see his young Squanchy days, see when his parents squanched, and
how about
really get the Squanch on that Squanch.
How about a whole season that takes place around his stand-up career that's just Seinfeld? They completely take the Seinfeld form. I think Rick would have to be Kramer in that Seinfeld reboot, probably. Bird Person would maybe be George. I don't know.
Jerry's Newman.
Yeah. Definitely Newman there. And I guess Elaine, would it be? Probably Beth. Yeah. But I guess Beth wasn't around. But yeah, so I would love to see that. But yeah, the fun thing is some of these I know we'll get. And they'll bring up some other stuff that's from like season 1, episode 4, and we'll be like, holy shit, they did it. So let's see how much time we have. Why don't we do one, maybe 2 more emails? Here's a real long one that gets in some good questions about the season as a whole. So we'll maybe wrap up on this. This is from Jonas. And Jonas gave us an analysis of each season and how the narrative format and storylines shifted. First of all, Jonas, thank you so much for putting this much thought to your email. It says, hey, Michael, Ryan, and others. Here are some of my thoughts on the series as a whole. I kind of look at each season of Rick and Morty as their different phases in the show's lifetime. It says season 1 and 2 are the vintage classics. Rick and Morty, not completely burdened by mainstream publicity and with a lower set of expectations, they can get away with small but impactful callbacks that are emotionally satisfying. So that's season 1 and 2. He refers to it as the vintage classics, before it was mainstream. I feel that.
I feel it.
Yeah, it says season 3 takes a new turn with a more serialized approach, kind of like how with South Park. They experimented with season 18 with continuity callbacks and went big on it. South Park he's talking about right there. Season 3 still did individual episodes that could stand alone, but had a through line that connects them all. So season 3, first time they had a serialized approach. Seems fair. Season 4, he says, became a big reaction to season 3 after Szechuan Gate and experimenting with continuity, where the premiere set the expectations for viewers and how they wanted to go forward with the show, doing a bit of both, which we saw. But since season 3 onwards, the highs begin to feel higher and the lows start to feel lower than before. Do you agree with that shift in season 4?
I unfortunately do. Yeah. And it's a shame that the whole Szechuan Gate was even a fucking thing,
yeah.
Like even if it happens, like I feel like you can react to it without reacting to it in a way. You can acknowledge it exists and say it's lame, and then just carry on with your life as opposed to incorporating it into the show.
Yeah.
Um,
Looking back, it was dumb.
yeah.
So yeah, he goes on to say by season 5, the experimentation is still continuing with many new writers, especially now that they have to think about at least 50 more episodes after this. Much like season 4, they're still very much gauging what works and doesn't work between the episodic and the lore heavy. By the finale, it looks like they're very much coming to the conclusion of embracing both by tying some loose ends and opening up the multiverse to new status quos. What do you guys think about this reading of the series so far? Kind of talked about it during. I don't have any big disagreements with Jonas's reading here. Yeah, I think that maybe like we talked about before, I kind of do think of 1 through 3 as more cohesive. 4 is trying to figure out. I feel like 4 is the first time they started like pushing the limits a little bit, pushing the boundaries, seeing what else they could do. And then 5 we've talked about enough. So I think it's a pretty solid reading of the series by our friend Jonas.
Yeah, I think I agree with everything. I think it was Billy in one of the other episodes brought up how that I don't even know the name of it, but whatever that episode was when you finally realize that the show even it's almost like a reveal that they have that there's continuity in the show whenever Morty brings up how he's buried in the backyard,
Yeah.
right? Where you're like, oh shit, things carry over from episode to episode in this insane show. That's awesome. I feel like that feeling of reveal of it being almost a novel thing that
Mm-hmm.
is occurring, they've kind of lost that in a way
Yeah.
where now that's part of the show is that things carry over, and it'd be cool to get back to it being a almost a gimmick, right? Where it's like, all right, this is just a from episode to episode thing, but then oh shit. And they kind of did that a couple of times in
Definitely.
this season where they just offhandedly mentioned something that had happened seasons, episodes ago, but that were big deals, right? And I think that that's cool. I think that they should keep doing that, and not make like anytime it's just it's complete serialization and they go super hard on it, it's hit or miss.
Yeah. I think I agree. And just because you mentioned it as well, I know the last episode we told you our friend Billy Domino is going to be back with us. He unfortunately wasn't able to be here because of cool, fun Hollywood stuff, but we'll have him back soon. And you can follow him online for his weird Billy takes. It was just a big day for Billy because it was the 20th anniversary of 9/11, and his 9/11 Seinfeld pilot was making the rounds again on social media. So,
Oh wow, yeah, I forgot about that.
awkward for Billy that 9/11 is the day that his name always gets passed around the internet again. Bummer for him. So there's a bunch more emails. You guys wrote the best emails this season. So many good ideas. We just can't do a 3-hour podcast. We're told we're not allowed to. So any final thoughts on this journey that's been season 5, Ryan?
It's been fun. It was even though it was the worst season, it was a fun time talking about it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you have thoughts?
My final thought is it's sometimes the journey is the destination, and it's
Uh-huh.
about the friends we make along the way.
Whoa.
And you only get what you give, and
But you can't always get what you want.
you can't,
but
but
you get what you need.
you get what you need, but also you can't buy me love.
Holy shit! I want to hold your hand, Mike.
Wow. I think that's it. I think that's everything from this season right there. So let's say this.
Learned something today.
Wow, Ryan. If in the meantime, when people are not listening to Show Me the Meaning, where can they find you, your person, your content, your wit, your commentary?
Oh.
Tell them where it is on the internet.
Ryan's Shorts on YouTube. I just released one, The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills tour with gubernatorial recall candidate Adam Papagan. I'm buddies with my buddy Adam, and we're in a band together, and he does a tour, and I just made a video about it. You should go check that out on my channel, Stat.
I flagged that one this morning. I've not watched it yet, but the
It's
title
15
alone
minutes. It's a long one.
made me think, I need this.
You don't know you need it, but you need it.
Searing political commentary. I love it. That's awesome. You can find me on at Michael O. Burns on Twitter, at Michael O. Burns with underscores between the O's on Instagram. Or find me at your local burrito shop or shaded area of a public park. Thank you so much for such a good season. Thanks you to our producer, primarily Maddie, but sometimes Matt, who have been here the whole season and made things sound and look so good. Thank you so much to Ryan for just being the best Squancher ever. And because Ryan's so good, the last word is yours, sir.
Wubba-lubba-dub-dub from Hollywood, California. See you next season, Squanchers!